in this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can start to bake out maps like displacement, occlusion, and normal maps. So let's jump in here. And so once we got our sculpted detail created for our model, once you're happy with it, we can now recreate this in the form of maps, because we're working at about 4 million polygons right now, and there's not really any way that we can manipulate this model, rig it, animate it the way that it is. So what we want to do is create maps to apply to a lower res version of this, for instance, possibly the lowest level, our base mesh that we created, to be able to reproduce the look while working with lower number of polygons. So we're going to come down under all of our sculpt brushes and go to Bake Sculpt Objects. There's an option for placing a file name. You can see there's 2 tabs here, Baking and Options. We'll start here under File Name. Go ahead and click through that. And I'm just going to jump into our project files and create a name for it. And go to Save. And so that's going to have a place for us to put our images. I'm going to use the same format, the default format, 32 bits per channel. I'm going to change the preset size from 512 by 512 to 2K. And you can see that that changes this as well. I'm going to leave these options alone. Okay, you can choose to put your images into a single file, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that off. And I do want to create a copy. So what's going to happen is it's going to create a copy at whatever our target level is and have all of those maps hooked up and ready to go for us. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that checked. Okay, so these are the options that I'm going to use at this point. Then I'm going to go over to Options. And now we need to choose what maps we actually want to bake. And so let's go ahead so that we can see them all. We'll just choose all of these maps. Now under here, there's something called optimal mapping. This is, as I talked about at the very beginning, or when we're doing our UVs, you do have the option to create UVs on the fly here, but we already have our UVs defined. We spent a little bit of time doing that, so we want to go ahead and leave this to off. If you want to use this to create UVs when it calculates or before it calculates, you can choose cubic or angle. I'm going to go ahead and leave it to off, which means it's going to use the existing UVs that it has. Okay. Now here you can choose whether what you want to be the source. So we want our highest level to be our source. So we've got level 6 checked, and then the target is going to be your low res. So in some cases you may not want to use your lowest level. Maybe you want to use level 1 or 2. And in those cases you can change which level you're actually using. I'm going to go ahead and choose level 0 for this. Now at the bottom you'll see that there's an option for our displacement settings. So right now it's set to XYZ object, okay, which will work fine. If we want to be able to animate that, move it around, you may want to choose XYZ tangent. And then normal, the same thing. So I'll choose tangent there as well. All right, so we're choosing to create all 3 of these maps. We've got the levels selected, so it's going to look at the level 6, calculate a map so that we can recreate the look of level 6 on level 0, and it's going to create a new copy of level 0 with a new material and all of the maps hooked up. Okay, if you want to preview your maps before you actually bake, you can hit this preview button and it'll go through that process, and then you'll be able to see a map come up here in our preview window. You also have the option to stop it in the middle if you want to, but you can see it now starting to calculate and render up. Okay, so once you've if you want to see your preview, the next thing that you can do would be to just bake. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. It's not going to destroy anything, so we can go ahead and test that out. Let's go ahead and hit bake and let that think on the calculation there, and then we'll come back in just a second and take a look at the result. All right, so there we've got our bake completed. Let's go ahead and see how this looks. So we're going to go into Objects, and let me go ahead and turn off the visibility of our actual sculpt just so we can see the resulting geometry here. So here is our geometry that it is saved out. So if we select this and take a look at the lines, you can see that it's the low res here. So let's see what happens if we were to just render this. So I'm going to go into rendering and change our anti-aliasing. Let me just render, and this is straight from the bake, so we haven't done anything. You can see there is a material that has been added, and you can see an indication of some sort of a texture, which it looks like the ambient occlusion. So let's go ahead and render this and see what it looks like. So I'll just do render to picture viewer. I'll let that calculate. And you can see some overlap there. That's just because I forgot to turn off the rendering of the sculpt. So let me go ahead and re-render that. Let's let that think for just a second. Now it's just going to render the object that we saved out. So you can see the detail being recreated there in the form of our displacement, even though the model, the actual geometry itself, is very low res. Okay, if we take a look at our material, you can see that it's piped the ambient occlusion into the diffusion. Okay, and then under displacement, you can see that it's actually added that displacement, and it's turned on subpolygon displacement, put in the appropriate subdivision level, and set everything up appropriately. Okay, and same thing with the normal. It's gone ahead and added that normal map. So we've got a copy here at level 0 with the texture that includes the 3 maps that we baked out. So you can see it's a really seamless procedure, especially being able to create that copy. You just check that little box there, and as soon as it's done baking the maps, it's going to go ahead and create this copy ready to go, and you can choose what level you want to save that out as. Okay, so now that we've got our sculpted details saved out as maps, let's go ahead and begin painting. So we want to go through the entire process here in Cinema 4D, and that's one of the strengths of Cinema 4D and body paint, is the fact that you can go all the way through the process of texture painting in addition to now sculpting. So let's, in the next lesson, take a look at setting up our model for painting our color textures. So we'll go ahead and do that next.